everybody, and welcome back. My name is Mark Mayfield, and I'm going to read the story for all ages today. This story is by Susan Strauss from Passionate Fact, Storytelling in Natural History and Cultural Interpretation. Jerry was walking down a street in Washington, D.C. along the sidewalk with his Native American friend who worked in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It was about lunchtime, so things were really hustling and bustling along the sidewalks. Cars honking, engine noises, screeching tires, you name it. But in the middle of all this, Jerry's friend stopped and said, "Hey, that's a cricket." "What?" Jerry said. "Yeah, a cricket," said his friend. "Look here." He pulled aside some of the bushes that separated the sidewalk from the government buildings, and there in the shade was a cricket chirping away. "Wow," said Jerry. "How'd you hear that and all this noise?" Well, it's just what I hear. It was the way I was raised. It's what I was taught to listen for, so I'll show you something. The man reached in his pocket, pulled out a handful of coins, nickels, dimes, quarters, and dropped them on the sidewalk. Everyone stopped and looked. They noticed. So consider this. When our busy lives, we're rushing down the highways and byways, we're preoccupied with lots of our own thoughts and expectations. What do you hear when all this is going on? Where is your focus? What are you paying attention to? Now, I suspect Les chose me to read this story because he thinks that maybe I listen to things different than other people. And I would say that that's probably true. But on the other hand, I have to think about what I'm listening to as well. It can be a menace when you're preoccupied with every bird and chirp and sound in nature. So regardless of your focus, it's always well to retune and think about what you're listening to. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mark. And now I just want to mention that our Helping Hands recipient this month is the Crisis Center. To make a donation, please go to the UUFM website at uufm.net. And then you'll be at our website, and at the top right of the web page, you're going to want to, if you want to donate, there's a little button that says donate, and you can click on that. And that'll take you to the donation page. And from there, you will see an option that says make a donation to Helping Hands. And below that, if you want, you could alternatively find the one that says make a donation pledge payment to general operations. So, and for either of those, then you would click on the donate button for those. And alternatively, if you'd like, you could write a check and you can mail it to our address, which is given on the page. And please note that if you do write a check, that you'll want to make a note in the notes section of what you want the funds to be used for. So any checks without a notation will be deposited into the general operating fund. On a separate and important point, during the offertory, please, if you have any joys and concerns that you'd like to share today, just write those in the chat. And then Jonalu will read those after the offertory. And this morning's offertory music will be Aurora's Theme by Beatrice Martin and played by our own Renee Brown.
That was beautiful. I'm so appreciative of Renee and the talents that she shares with us. I don't actually see any joys and sorrows this morning. I would just say that we know that we all carry things in our hearts. We carry the woes and stresses of our time. We carry the particular concerns that are in our families and among our friends. And we carry the joys. And together these weave together to make up life. And so let us just keep in mind and keep in our thoughts all those who have worries, all those who have illness, all those who have sorrows. And let us also keep in our hearts those who are rejoicing, those who are happy, those who are celebrating. That's what it is to be part of community. And we have a reading now from Jane Pelletier.
This reading is from Steve Garnaas Holmes, Reverend Steve Garnaas Holmes, and it's called I Am God, of course. I looked at the tree blossoming in the spring and said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am God, of course, becoming beautiful." And I beheld her. I looked at the sea and said, "Who are you?" And the same voice said, "It is I flowing within you." And I opened myself. I listened to the silence and said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am holding you." And I listened more. I looked at my troubles and said, "Who are you?" And I heard, "I am your own broken heart." And I wept with gratitude. I looked at the suffering of the world and I asked, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am in labor pains." And I moved closer. I looked at the unknown and said, "Who are you?" And the silence said, "I am becoming." And I stepped into the darkness.
I'm guessing that not a lot of Unitarian Universalists would say they've heard God speak, either in a burning bush or in the sea or the silence. Then again, it depends on how you define God and how you understand the sacred at work in the world. Many Christians speak of the sacred word, the Holy Bible, as that which reveals God to us. And like many UUs, I prefer a broader perspective, the sacred world, I'll call it, rather than the sacred word. Songwriter Peter Meyer tells in his song, "Everything is Holy Now," which I've posted on both the Fellowship Facebook page and the UUFM Coffee and Conversation group. He tells how he went from seeing only certain prescribed things as holy to finding holiness throughout the world. Everything is holy now. Whenever we talk about such concepts in UU circles, there are questions, even, or maybe especially among ministers. Each month I gather with other UU ministers who use the Soul Matters themes to discuss how we're approaching the topic and what we're struggling with. And I explained to them this month that I was using the threefold approach of spiritual directors to listening to self, listening to the other, and listening to God or the holy. And of course, someone asked, "What do you mean by listening to the holy?" And it's hard to explain. One of those things, I know it when I see it sort of things. And sometimes when I am deeply listening to someone else, something comes to me that feels more profound than my personal reaction. Maybe an image, maybe a question, maybe a connection. Perhaps it's my subconscious. I don't know the source. When that happens, I don't immediately insert it into the conversation. I sit with it and turn it over. I weigh it, see if it has heft. I consider whether it persists or evaporates as the listening moves on. Would this push the conversation deeper? Would it keep it at a surface level or take it off the rails entirely? If the idea, image, question passes my little tests, perhaps it has something of the holy in it, and perhaps it is worth offering to the person I am listening to. And more generally, at times I'm not listening to another person. Something beyond me may call to me. It may come from the glow of orange as the sun is sinking, or an expanse of stars above me, or the movement of music that pulls me along with me, that dances with me, or a moment of silence that grounds and connects me, or even the flash of a smile from someone I love, or someone I don't even know. 20th century theologian and churchman James Luther Adams named two concerns that most of us seek in our religious homes: ultimacy and intimacy. Now, we know what intimacy means. That's pretty easy. We want to know and be known by others. Ultimacy, though, what does Adams mean by that? Like intimacy, ultimacy concerns our connections, not the tiny personal connections, though, rather connections with what is ultimate, what is most essential, most crucial, supreme. We need to connect with something, named or nameless, bigger than ourselves. The divine, the holy, the good, the true, God. We need to know that our greatest worries are minuscule amidst the drifting of the stars. And at the same time, we need to know that in our lives, we participate in the eternal boundlessness that inspires and underlies the movement of the universe. We are part of the ultimate, and it is more than we are alone. We seek ultimacy. And the need for ultimacy and intimacy bring us here to church, whatever form it takes, even in Zoom rooms. And here, we can have that ultimacy and intimacy without reciting creeds we question. Rather, we Unitarian Universalists confess our experience that connections with the holy and with one another are not dependent on a limited set of beliefs. Now, I'm guessing some of you may still be skeptical. What do we need? Why do we need ultimacy? What for? This spiritual talk does not sound practical or useful. I would say we need it because it lessens our temptation to see the world only from our narrow, selfish point of view. And for me, that which is sacred helps me filter out the noise and the mundane to come to what lifts us and speaks truth to us. It reminds me what I value most, what really makes a difference. Otherwise, I may become too focused on my own thoughts, feelings, sensations, which are passing, not permanent. Listening to the sacred can give me perspective. An old Jewish story tells of a person with a sentence written on a piece of paper in their pocket. And the sentence reads, "You are but dust." Yet there's another paper in the other pocket with another sentence. It says, "For you, all the world was created." The sacred lives in this balance between being dust and being the recipient of all the world's gifts. The two held together provide perspective and name our place in the universe. For you all the world was created. You are but dust. So by sacred or holy, I don't mean blessed or chosen by a particular divine being, unless you're taking that metaphorically. I do mean that the sacred or holy gives me guidance because it distills and captures my highest aspirations. So that requires what is called in a religious context, discernment. A simple summary of the discernment process is asking two questions. Does this bring me closer to my highest aspirations? Does this take me away from my highest aspirations? That which takes me toward rather than away from our highest aspirations may be called sacred. The religious life, the life of seeking after ultimacy, must be a life of continual discernment. Constant examination to determine what brings me closer to the Most High, what makes me more aware of what is trustworthy and what is not. Continual learning and processing. So, listening for the holy. To discern, I have to be open to what comes and listen for where I may hear what is sacred. The story that Mark told this morning made the point that we will hear what we are prepared to listen for. We will listen for what is of most value to us, whether it be the roll of coins or the song of the cricket. We can take it a step further. Unitarian transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson said in the 18th century, a person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think that our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imagination and our thoughts will determine our lives and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming. Some religions see this world as being fallen. They dismiss its value and its holiness. Such a belief system does not think that we can learn from the rocks and the crickets. They don't think they're worth listening to. And often because they've gotten confused. They've realized that listening too much to and for the coins falling on the sidewalk creates problems. So they said, then we need to look for another world, another realm for what is truly good and let this one go. And that's not a Unitarian Universalist approach. We know that we can find the best and the highest around us here on this earth. And I don't only mean nature that points us in the direction of holiness, though that is part of it. Poet Anne Sexton, in her poem, Welcome Morning, speaks of joy and hints of more. She writes, there is joy in all, in the hair I brush each morning, in the cannon towel newly washed that I rub my body with each morning, in the chapel of eggs I cook each morning. And if she hasn't been explicit enough by naming her breakfast as a chapel, she continues to name everyday items that greet her and goes on to say, all this is God, right here in my pea green house each morning. And I mean, though often forget, to give thanks, to faint down by the kitchen table in a prayer of rejoicing as the holy birds at the kitchen window peck into their marriage of seeds. The everyday, the mundane too, can be holy. So when Justin Bieber sings, "The way you hold me feels so holy," he's talking about how love can bring a sense of the sacred. I heard someone in a Zoom meeting yesterday actually say, "I feel like we're on holy ground." A Zoom meeting. It was a room full of Manhattan activists planning together for the future, for helping the world become more just, more peaceful, more whole. The prolific poet Anonymous put it this way: forget about enlightenment. Sit down wherever you are and listen to the wind that is singing in your veins. Feel the longing, the fear, the love in your bones. Open your heart right now, not to who you'd like to be, not the saint you're striving to become, but the being right here before you. All of you is holy. You're already more and less than whatever you can know. Breathe out. Look in. Let go. Holy moments do not all look and feel the same. They can be widely different. They're not all soft and fuzzy, and they're not all dramatic and awesome. Look at this picture. Our actions in the world to bring change can be a holy moment. Take a moment and listen to the power of this picture. Or more locally, to this one. Consider that if we are listening to the sacred in the world, it can be anything that draws us closer to our core, to the core. The sacred may be whatever is beyond ourselves and others that calls to us. Maybe in our connections to our children or to our parents or to whoever we include in our family. Maybe in a reminder of the age of our earth and the long existence of human beings and all the effects that we've had on this earth. Maybe in all the ways that we live our values. Maybe in finding the human expression of creativity. And yes, maybe in nature. We may hear the sacred in a bird's song or the sound of a cricket. We may sense it in that persistent idea that our ego keeps telling us to squash into silence. we may find the sacred in silence. Deeply listening for the sacred may help us navigate the challenges we face in ourselves and in our relations with others. Most of all, it will guide us toward humility and awe. You are but dust, and for you, all this world was created. I invite you again to listen to the natural world, to listen to the sounds of the water, yes, but to listen to the trees too. The trees reaching up to the sky, the trees dead lying across the stream. Listen to the rocks and to the algae that grows on the rocks. Listen to the bubbles of air folded in with the water, to the foam. Listen to all that is large and all that is small. Listen too to the intersections of human effort with the natural world, the place where we abide most often. Listen. What do you hear when you listen to the sacred? We have some time to share a bit about our listening to the sacred. What do you hear when you listen to the sacred? I'd invite you, you can go to the participants on the bottom of your screen. If you're on a laptop or computer, there should be an option for participants. You can click on that and find yourself and raise your hand, or you can put something into the chat, or you can just like wave your hands if you can't figure out how to make that work, and I will call on folks to offer your thoughts in this time. Larry Weaver. Larry, would you unmute and talk to us, please?
I'll try. I finally succeeded. It's not exactly listening, but it's being out of town and on a clear night in October and looking up about 2/3 of the way between the Cassiopeia M or W and the Great Square, about 2/3 of the way between those constellations, there's a fuzzball, just a little fuzzball. It's the Andromeda Galaxy, and it's the farthest thing you can see with your naked eye. You look at it and you're looking at light that's been coming at us for a couple of million years. So if you want a time machine, you can go back in time 2 million years just by going out at night and looking up. I don't know where that fits in listening exactly, but it's what immediately occurred to me when you asked.
Yeah, I think you're hearing the sacred even if you're doing it with your eyes. I see that Mark Mayfield wrote some comments in the chat with that waterfall. He was looking for a dipper, a water ouzel, a beautiful bird sound, and they live in those high mountain tumbling streams. Other thoughts?
I just want to follow up on what was just said, and that is, I find looking at the stars at night is very grounding. It really centers my emotions and thoughts and my spirit. So, like Larry was saying.
I heard someone saying recently, and I think that there's real truth to this, that we sometimes need to look into something expansive. Looking into something expansive, it does ground us, but because it helps us realize our place, as Mary Oliver writes, our place in the family of things. And it helps us realize that being in between that we have, that you are but dust, and for you all of the world was created. It keeps us in that place, which is a very good place to be. And I see a note from Rob DeLong that's standing in a stream fly fishing with the sounds of the rapids and the water flowing by. I feel close to the sacred. And Mark Mayfield added, fishing is sacred.
Jonalu,
Yes.
on the theme of fishing or animals, we've rescued some dogs, and I think it can be just a matter of sitting on the sofa with a chihuahua that is happily chirping away or making some chortling noises. Lynn will go to the barn at night and had a comment about being out with the horses in the evening.
Yeah, I go outdoors every night between 9 and 10, and it's about 20 minutes, and it's just the most beautiful sky. It changes all the time, depending on the season and the weather and the temperature. But I do find, like Les was saying and others, that somehow that quiet time in the evening and then the expanse of the sky, and of course, there's very little ambient light. So it really has its contrast is pretty high. And then I can walk around and back to the house. And so that's, for me, a really special and sacred time. And if it doesn't get done, it has to be done every night. So it's a very ritual. I like the ritual built into that.
But the connection to the soul or the spirit of a nickering horse or a dog, I think, is where a lot of spiritual connection can occur.
Thank you. Dick Beeman.
Oh, well, it's actually me, Sylvia.
Okay.
Well, I've been noticing that I have trouble orienting when I'm wearing my face mask. And I mean, I feel like I feel a little bit confused when I'm wearing my face mask. Diane Barker said that we discount the tactile feeling of air on our face, and something about that. I mean, that it's just how integrated our senses are, that we don't think about that, and just the change in kind of like cutting off something that you used to having can feel confusing.
Thank you, Sylvia. Linda Johnson.
Well, thinking about listening, when I hear music that I like, I feel like I'm in the presence of the sacred. I can't listen to Beethoven or to Tchaikovsky's violin concerto, for instance, without thinking there must be a God, because it's such a wonderful creation.
Thank you. Michael Oldfather.
Well, I'm okay with everything that you have said about sacred and related terms. And when I'm with this group of people, I'm comfortable, but I am reluctant ever to use sacred around my conservative Christian friends, because I don't want them to think that their, what I think, very narrow definition of the term is, applies to me. I just don't want them to know, or to be thinking the wrong thing. Because it seems to me, for most of them, the definition of what's sacred and what a sacrifice is and what a sacrament is pretty narrow. So I'm careful.
Well, and I mean, I think it depends entirely on which person you're talking about too. Because it varies. But, words are very hard. Words are very slippery. Jane Pelletier.
This is entirely different from what we've been hearing, I think, but one of the most sacred times in my life, probably the most sacred time in my life, was walking my husband through his last illness and death. I was inspired by a book called May I Walk You Home by Joyce Rupp. And it was like, years and years ago, you used to see images of a young boy asking a girl if he could carry her books home. This is going back a long way. But that's the inspiration for it. And I was so in awe of walking him home to the end of his life. It was just it took my breath away, just like fall takes my breath away. It was the most sacred experience I think I've ever had. And so that's a different thought, I think.
Diane.
I was saying thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that is the deepest service we can do for anyone, help them when they're exiting. So what I had been in line to talk about was how grateful I am that all of you who've talked about looking up at the stars. I can think of all the rest of you looking at the stars when I go out. Because, when you go out at night and everything, the day has kind of settled, I always like to look for the Pleiades. And, that's kind of like a group connection, because I look for Cassiopeia and Orion. And, Orion is not always visible. It's visible through the winter, but it then dips below the horizon in the summer. And it just gives me this sense of how we're on, who needs a carnival ride? The Earth is the greatest carnival ride in the universe for us. And to be able to look out and see light that is so old, it's beyond our imagination. I think that you all have given me a new dimension of when I go out and look at the stars at night, of feeling a much deeper, greater connection. So thank you.
Thank you. Judy Nicholson.
I agree with all of you, except for the fly fishing. Not going there, but I feel a sacred connection with trees and plants and all those wonderful things. But I think the most sacred connection that I have is with my children, my grandchildren, the girls that live in this house, all of, everybody that I love and who loves me. So that's sacred to me.
And I see that Katie Kingery Page also said that caring for children and animals is sacred. And Sybil agreed about the stars. Looking at the stars on a dark night lifts me up, makes my heart feel expansive and connected. I fly. I think Sybil's a poet. That's beautiful. And a couple of people have commented on agreeing with Jane about the sacredness of walking with someone who is dying. And Rob DeLong says, in the moments after the birth of our two children, I also felt very connected, the moment of birth. Katie says, my dear little brother and his wife lost a baby in utero at 7 months last year. It has been an emotional journey for them and all of us. It reminds me that reproductive justice and choice over our own bodies is sacred. And I think we'll end with Anna Franklin's comment that community gathering is absolutely sacred. And here we are in community, gathered. Larry adds, watching 4 small kids rolling down a small hill was a sacred moment. And I think that that's perhaps a symbol of community and of that connection between the human and this world that we live in. Thank you all for what you had to offer. I feel full. And our closing hymn is number 352, Find a Stillness. Renee will be playing for us.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Sarah Moores Campbell offers these words. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown.